All right, welcome to another edition of our Chapter 8 notes. We're going to be going over 8.2 and 8.3. So, again, we're going to be talking about how to better manage grasslands and to protect land management. So, first, how can we as people manage our grasslands better? So, with grassland productivity, this can be sustained and improved by controlling the abundance and distribution of grazing livestock and by restoring degraded rangeland. So again, if we control how much certain things are grazing on or grazing livestock, so how much are we allowing different, let's say, cows or different cattle to feed on um, the grasslands, making sure that with the grassland, like we don't do too much. Again, it's kind of that idea, the tragedy of the commons. Making sure that those grasses can grow back to a healthy level. Okay. So, why are grasslands important to ecosystems? Grasslands cover about 1/4 of the Earth's landmass and are are the most widely used altered ecosystems other than rainforests. So again, we use our grasslands for um, converting those into farms and all that, different fields. We also allow for different cattle to graze on that grassland for their food. And so that's why, again, outside of the rainforest, we use the grasslands also. What we see with rangelines, so again, these are going to be unfenced, tropical to temperate grasslands that supply forage for grazing. So again, you're going to see a lot of rangeland throughout the Midwest, throughout the South of the United States. Again, just think of a grazeland as for different cattle and all that to feed on it. Okay. And again, this is kind of like that shared, that common resource that a lot of different people can use. Pastures are managed grasslands, so fenced meadows that are often planted with domesticated grasses or other forage crops. Again, with pastures, again, these are controlled by certain farmers or certain people that are going to own the land and are not going to allow public people to come in. This are usually private lands that are managed by certain people. The problem is, and like I said before, is that there's going to be overgrazing that's going to occur, meaning that too many animals are going to graze in an area too long. And so, again, what's going to happen is um, essentially, tragedy of the commons, that if too many things are overgrazing on it, that it's going to eventually disappear. And so, what's going to happen is it's going to exceed the area's carrying capacity. So, the carrying capacity is when a certain population can live in a certain area. Okay, so for example, if there's enough food and area and water for 10 cows, that's its carrying capacity. That's the most that an ecosystem can support the number of individuals or number of cows, that being 10. If there's more than 10 cows, there's not going to be enough food for all the cows. So what's going to happen is that 11 is going to go to 10 because that area cannot support more than 10. And so what happens with overgrazing is that not only are you going to harm the grass roots, so the roots are going to allow the grass to regrow, that's not going to occur. You're going to have less grass. And with less grass, you're going to see that soil erosion or compaction is going to occur. This is going to lower the soil's capacity to hold water. So instead of there being a consistent soil there, what you're going to see is that the soil is going to eventually get beaten up, and all that water, instead of staying into the ground, is going to slide. It's not going to stay in the ground, it's just going to keep moving. And what you're going to see is that there's going to be an invasion of plants that cattle will not eat. So you're going to see invasive species come in, let's say weeds or other thing, and they're going to make their home there. And instead of it being a healthy grassland, what you're going to see is that all these different species coming in are not going to be healthy, not only for the cattle that are there, but just for the grassland. It's going to change a lot. And so, again, the big thing is that with the healthy roots there, lots of grass coverage, less soil erosion, and an organized way, you're going to be able to keep these different grasses. So the rangelands can be protected too. And so, again, we can control how many grazing animals are going to be in those rangelands. So, again, we can control that. This is how we can sustain those rangelands. So, again, we can control the number of grazing animals that are there. We can avoid grazing in the area at the same time of plant growth year after year or during the growing season. So, instead of eating there all the time, well, maybe we can control which areas are being eaten at a certain time. If the grass is growing or the grass is really low, we don't have the cattle eat in that area. Instead, we have it eat in different areas. We can consider livestock diet, match suitable areas. So again, we can determine how much of that diet is controlled by grass. What you see is that a lot of people that own cattle will feed cattle grain or corn or all this different stuff instead of the grasses that they could or usually would eat. So again, we can mix it up there and make sure we're not eating grass altogether and I guess grazing too much. We can use herbicides, mechanical removal of invasive species. So just kind of like what we've talked about in class with invasive species is that we can control what's coming in and what's not. So we can use herbicides to make sure that certain insects aren't coming in. We can make sure that invasive plants aren't taking over and killing the grasses in the area. And then finally, we can permit short-term trampling by livestock to destroy the root system of unwanted plants. So again, we can control the areas in which the livestock are in. They're not destroying the grass. They're not killing the grass by trampling or essentially stepping on them. So again, these are just different ways in which we can protect our rangelands, our grasslands. And again, essentially, it's just being smart about it. We don't overgraze. We come up with different methods in order to sustain what we have, essentially. And so 8.3 is going to be talking about how these lands can be better managed. So again, we need to come up with a better way to be more effective in protecting existing parks and natural reserves, right? And essentially just Earth's undisturbed lands. And this will sustain biodiversity. So the world's parks may face a lot of different challenges. What you're going to see is that there might not be enough many too small to maintain large animal species. So there might not be enough land. There might not be enough food for these large animal species. That might be a problem. Many are challenged with invasive species. So again, invasive species are going to outcompete the native species that are in that area. So instead of there being enough food, the invasive species is going to take all the food. It's going to invade the area. What you're going to see is that some parks are so popular that the number of visitors is going to degrade the very features that are made to make them look attractive. So what humans bring might be pollution. They might litter. They might trample different areas. Instead of it being all natural, what you're going to see is that those humans are going to change that area, and it might not be for the better. And then internationally, there's going to be a lot of illegal gathering of firewood, a lot of hunting or poaching, logging, mining. So again, cutting down trees in areas that are meant to not be cut down, hunting species for game, right? I know a lot of people will travel to Africa to hunt certain game, a lot of like bigger animals, larger animals. And again, logging and mining, just a lot of illegal, unmanaged things that people are doing for self-interest instead of doing it for the greater of the ecosystem, the environment. So what you're going to see is that U.S. national parks are also being challenged. And so the national park system, which is going to include 59 parks, 339 national monuments, these are popular, but the biggest challenge is popularity. Again, we talked about a lot of people coming in and, again, taking away those, the natural of it. They're coming in and bringing their trash. They're bringing in pollution that makes it not as natural. And because of that, you're going to see that many parks are islands of biodiversity. But if you don't have that biodiversity there, you're going to see that a lot of things are going to change. The loss of keystone species is going to hurt. And what a keystone species is it's essentially the backbone of that ecosystem, of that environment. So an example of that would be wolves in Yellowstone. So there's a video on that. I'll try to find the video and share that with you guys. But again, what we see is that these wolves, if they're not in that ecosystem, what happens is wolves hunt deer. Deer eat grass. If there aren't enough wolves in that area, the deer population is going to increase. With an increase in deer population, you're going to see that there's going to be a decrease in vegetation or whatever the food that the deer is going to eat. And so with the decrease in food, that is going to hurt not only the other animals that depend on the vegetation for food, but it's going to hurt, again, the different soils, the different grasslands, whatever the case may be. It could cause soil erosion. It could cause for different plant species not to be able to grow, so they'd be extinct in that area. Nature reserves, we go on to nature reserves, and these are going to only occupy a small part of Earth's land, so less than 13% of Earth's lands is either strictly or partially protected. Less than 6% is strictly protected from potential harmful human activities. So again, a nature preserve is something where you're just kind of leaving nature be, let it be. Nothing's going to affect it, nothing's going to harm it. You just kind of let nature become what it is. And so beneficial impacts to reserves can be the increase of established buffer zones. And so these are strict protection of reserves' inner core to manage nature preserves. So again, we are letting things let them be. We're not going to let human influence destroy the area, and we allow for things to grow and essentially just let it be. We don't bring our pollution, we don't bring our deforestation, or we don't bring our cattle to feed on these different areas. We just let them be what they be. So protecting wilderness is an important way to protect biodiversity. Underdeveloped lands can be protected from exploitation by designating them as wilderness areas. And so what we see is that the activities that alter ecology of such areas not allowed. So forestry, road and trail development, mining, building. Essentially, we just let those areas be. We don't go and mine. We don't go and build different things, establish different things. Areas can also be protected by the Wilderness Act, and this has grown nearly 12-fold since the Act's inception. So again, areas are being protected by humans, making sure that not only humans but other invasive species do not change the ecosystem for the worst. Okay? And so I will try to get these videos to you guys in a separate recording. But that is it for 8.2 and 8.3.